stuff going on, and it was terrifying.
Then came a terrible period of not frustration, but anger among the ranks. And the leaders had a problem because they were real concerned that several of the guys would want to get even with that. That was cold-blooded murder, what they done. It was cold-blooded murder.
The events of July 20th, Bloody Friday, galvanized neutral public opinion to the side of the strikers. Eric Severide, then a Minnesota University student, writes that he is as close to becoming a practicing revolutionary as he ever will be. Protest rallies even attract small businessmen as advocates of a continued strike. Fearing further violence, Floyd Olson orders the National Guard into the city. Wednesday, July 25th. Two federal mediators, Father Francis Haas and E.H. Dunnigan, offer a proposal which comes very close to union demands. The strikers answer yes to the plan by an overwhelming vote. "We will not deal with this communist leadership," replies the Citizens Alliance. After bitterly castigating the Alliance for its refusal to accept the Haas-Dunnigan plan, an angry Floyd Olson declares martial law. Thousands of young National Guardsmen fill the street. Like 19-year-old Alan Vickerman, they wield rifles and machine guns that they are not trained to use.
Well, I never shot a machine gun in my life. Even out at Fort Ripley, they never had any training on me outside of the fact that you knocked it down and cleaned it and put it back together again. We rode around 6 men to a squad, sometimes 5, 1 lieutenant, 2 Thompson machine guns, and the sidearms.
For several days, the Guardsmen patrol the city. Whatever Floyd Olson's personal intentions, martial law is breaking the strike. The Guardsmen are not effective in keeping the streets closed to trucking. By August 1st, 70% of normal truck traffic is moving. The union holds a street meeting challenging martial law. In response, Olson orders the Guard to union headquarters. 3 leaders of 574, Bill Brown, Vincent Dunn, and Miles Dunn, and 68 other strikers are arrested. Feeling betrayed by a governor they thought sympathetic to their cause, hundreds of other strikers roam the streets, turning over trucks and confronting Guardsmen. The young soldiers are frightened, but they hold their fire.
I mean, you got a whole bunch of people coming at you and you got live ammunition. And you don't know if this machine, even at 50 feet, or and even at 100 yards, you're shooting probably in a 3-foot circle. Now, you shoot a bunch of ammunition at somebody like that, I mean, you're going to kill somebody. You're not just going to shoot them in the knee, you know. And I wondered what I was going to do. I never had to pull the trigger, but I wondered what I was going to feel like afterwards.
The organizer calls for a general strike. Still free leaders of Local 574 agree to meet with Olson to discuss the strike. They firmly demand the release of Brown and the Dunns. Needing labor support in the coming election, Olson complies. Now, Olson orders the Guard to tighten up on truck traffic and to raid the Citizens Alliance headquarters. He hopes the raid will convince the employers to agree to the Haas-Dunnigan plan. "We will not surrender to communism," the employers reply. They file an injunction suit to stop martial law, but the courts reject it. Still, heavy truck traffic continues despite the National Guard. Cruising pickets who violate martial law in an attempt to stop trucks are arrested by the Guard and sent to a stockade set up at the state fairgrounds. Conditions are primitive. At first, the strikers sleep under the stars. As their spokesman, Mo Hork demands tents and other amenities.
And the request was fulfilled. They come in there with a couple of truckloads and they just dumped them on the ground and drove away, and that was it. So I sent word that I wanted to see him, and he came, and I told him to send in a detail to put them up. And he says, "Why won't you put them up?" And I told him that it was government property and we're not going to mess with government property. And it didn't take very shortly. There was a detail came in, the tents were set up, the cots were in there, the blankets were unbundled, and we had shelter and we had food. And I also asked him about recreation, as these people ain't going to sit around in that. They had what he called sharpshooters. I don't know, maybe some of them couldn't hit the side of a barn if they'd shoot at it. And they had them all the way around. So he got us some softballs and cards and things like that, and I asked him how about some baseball bats, and he says, these boys are too handy with them. They know how to handle them too good. So we couldn't have no bats.
The strike enters its fourth week, having become a battle of wills. By now, the trucking firms are hurting. Many are anxious to agree to the Haas-Dunnigan plan. Some do, but Citizens Alliance pressure keeps the major companies from signing. August 8, 1934. President Franklin Roosevelt visits Rochester, Minnesota. Floyd Olson hurries to meet with him. They spend 4 hours discussing the truck strike crisis. After Olson and Roosevelt confer, Jesse Jones, chairman of the New Deal's Reconstruction Finance Corporation, calls the leading bankers of Minneapolis.
Father Haas claims that what Jones said to these business leaders in Minneapolis and bankers in Minneapolis was that if the strike were not settled within 2 weeks, the Reconstruction Finance Corporation would call in all of the outstanding loans to Twin Cities banks and railroads.
But in the end, it is the persistence and militant tenacity of the strikers which proved too strong for the Citizens Alliance to resist. On August 13th, the employers offer a compromise plan, but the strikers smell victory and reject it. On August 19th, the Citizens Alliance agrees to the essentials of the Haas-Dunnigan plan.
And in 34, I think we got an increase up to about $33, or approximately that figure at that time. So we could probably take care of our families a little bit better, because we was working a 48-hour week, and for $18 a week we just weren't making both ends meet.
Well, after the strike, when he did get this raise, of course, we bought me the first washing machine I ever had with $1 down and so much at the town market. And I was enthralled. I was so happy to have this washing machine. And that was the first and only thing I ever owned that could call my own. Otherwise, it was rented apartments and everything was furnished.
The success of the truck strike leads to the rapid unionization of other Minneapolis industries and sparks labor organizing from Rhode Island to Washington state. Troubled by the mounting disorder, Congress takes notice and passes the Wagner Labor Relations Act of 1935, which guarantees workers rights to bargain collectively through unions. The Battle of Minneapolis is a turning point for labor.
When we think about the events of 46 years ago and the toll it took, but the mighty change that it brought about, it's like a major earthquake that alters events for decades, literally centuries to come.
I'm just proud of
Johnny Manure. What's my nickname? Hello, Sean. How are you? Sean. Hello, Happy. You haven't changed the bed.
Go on over and get No, I'm talking about the wild Indian.
Well, I started in 28.
Well, I was working part-time in the summer and stuff, so I started hauling coal in 1935 and I got 6 bits an hour. Boy, I thought that was mighty big wages, then. You can make 40, 50 bucks a week with overtime over the few months.
That's a big money. What have you been doing for the last 35 years?
Nowadays, that wouldn't even buy a good meal.
But you know, it brings back a lot of memories.
Oh, this town would have been an open shop scab town if it wouldn't have been for us.
Oh, well, and not only this town alone.
The whole world, the whole
This
nation.
town, the whole world, the whole nation, because we, if you remember what the meetings we used to have, and we always set one ironclad rule, you don't cross the picket line. And this is what made all the rest of the unions, not only here in Minneapolis, but all over the country, and from here it spread throughout the world in a lot of other countries. And I always feel that this wasn't a strike, it was a civil war.
Right.
And if you remember, we took a vow at that time that we're going to win, and we did.
And we fought everybody.
That's
Minneapolis Truck Strike is memorialized for the first time at a picnic in a city park. More than 100 living veterans of those tumultuous days of 1934 are in attendance. They're awarded medallions commemorating their participation in the strike.
Jack Maloney.
Minneapolis, Minnesota, 1981. It is a cheerful and prosperous city now. Standard of living and quality of life for working people are high by national standards. But on this Minneapolis street, in an industrial district, there is no monument to remind passers-by that what happened here almost 50 years ago transformed the city and played a decisive role in the history of organized labor in America. That on this street, over 50 unarmed men were shot by police, and 2 of them died. The bloodstains are gone from this street now, and in the minds of most people, it is just another street. But for men like Jack Maloney, who spent much of his working life as a labor organizer, the sound of gunfire they heard here on a hot July day in 1934 will echo in their memories for as long as they live.
Well, it made me, instead of just being a, shall I say, happy-go-lucky truck driver that was just rooting around, it made me think more seriously of what the whole thing is all about. That there's more in life than just going out and getting yourself a 50-cent an hour job or a $50 a week job, depending on the, you know, the wages of the times. I said there's got to be something more to this, and we have to make the workers realize that through the organized strength of unions, they can achieve a better way of life.
It is we who plowed the prairies, built the cities where they trade, dug the mines and built the workshops, endless miles of river lay. Now we stand outcast and starving, with the wonders we have made. But the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. In our hands lies the power greater than their hoarded gold, greater than the might of armies, magnified 1,000-fold. We can bring to birth a new world from the ashes of the old. For the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever.